The small spaceship floated quietly near Europa, one of Jupiter's moons. Inside, Captain Tae-ho Kim checked his instruments. His mission was simple: collect ice samples and study them. He had been in space for 3 months now. "How are you doing, Bori?" Tae-ho asked, looking at the cream-colored dog resting in a special bed near his captain's chair. Bori, a Korean Jindo dog with alert eyes and pointed ears, lifted his head and wagged his tail. He was no ordinary dog. Bori had been specially trained for space travel and carried a small chip in his brain that helped him understand simple commands even in emergency situations. Tae-ho smiled and reached over to scratch behind Bori's ears. "Just a few more hours, and we'll start our journey home." The dog was more than just a companion. He was part of an important study about how animals adapted to space. So far, Bori had done amazingly well. He used his special space boots with ease and seemed to enjoy floating in zero gravity during exercise time. Tae-ho turned back to his work. He was the first Korean astronaut selected for a solo mission this far into space. His family had been so proud at the launch ceremony. He could still see his mother's tearful smile and his father's straight back, trying to hide his emotions. Suddenly, the ship's alarm began to blare. "Warning! Unknown energy signature detected." The computer's voice was calm despite the red lights flashing everywhere. Tae-ho's hands raced across the control panel. "Computer, identify the source." "Unable to identify. Energy pattern unknown in database." Through the main window, Tae-ho saw it, a massive ship appearing out of nowhere. It was like nothing he had ever seen before. It looked like a giant crystal with smooth sides that reflected the distant sun in rainbow colors. Bori jumped to his feet, barking at the window. A beam of blinding white light shot out from the crystal ship, engulfing Tae-ho's small vessel. The controls went dead. Everything electronic shut down except for the emergency lights. "Bori, come here," Tae-ho called. The dog ran to his side. Tae-ho's hands moved quickly. He had been trained for many emergencies, though nothing like this. He reached under his control panel and pulled out a small survival pack, attaching it to Bori's space harness. "Emergency Protocol Jindo 7, he whispered to the dog. Bori's eyes seemed to understand. The special training and the neural chip did their job. This command meant the dog needed to hide and wait for the right moment to help. The ship shuddered. Something was pulling them toward the crystal vessel. "Go, Bori. Ventilation shaft," Tae-ho commanded, pointing to a small opening near the floor that led to the ship's air system. It was barely big enough for the medium-sized dog. Bori hesitated, not wanting to leave his master. "Go," Tae-ho ordered more firmly. This time, Bori obeyed, squeezing his body into the shaft just as the door to the cockpit was forced open with a hiss of pressure. Tae-ho stood tall, facing whatever was coming. Through the door floated 3 robots, or were they suits with aliens inside? They were sleek and silver, with no visible faces, just smooth reflective surfaces where heads should be. "Human specimen detected," said a mechanical voice. "Collecting for Her Majesty." One of the figures raised what looked like a small wand. A soft blue light washed over Tae-ho, and he felt his muscles freeze. His last conscious thought was of Bori. His loyal friend was still free. As darkness took him, he saw a cream-colored tail disappearing deeper into the ventilation system. Then there was only blackness. Tae-ho woke up slowly. His head hurt, and bright light made him squint. He tried to move his arms, but they felt heavy. After a few tries, he managed to sit up. He was in a room with white walls that seemed to glow. There was no door that he could see. The bed he sat on was the only furniture. It was soft but strange, like it was made of something that wasn't quite solid. "Where am I?" he said out loud, not expecting an answer. "You are in the holding chamber of Her Majesty's Royal Collection Ship," a voice replied from nowhere. Tae-ho jumped. "Who's there?" A small ball of light appeared in the air. It pulsed as it spoke. "I am Interface Unit 7. I serve as translator and guide for new specimens. Specimens. Tai-ho didn't like that word. I'm not a specimen. I'm Captain Tai-ho Kim of Earth's Space Agency. Yes, human male. Korean subtype. Age 34 Earth years. Healthy condition. You have been added to Her Majesty's living collection. Tai-ho stood up. His legs were shaky, but he forced himself to stand tall. I demand to be returned to my ship. Your vessel has been stored. Your request is noted but denied. Before Tai-ho could argue more, one wall of the room seemed to melt away. Beyond it was a huge hall with a high ceiling that sparkled like stars. At the far end sat a figure on a floating throne. 3 of the silver beings he had seen on his ship floated into his room. They didn't touch him but formed a triangle around him. A force pushed him forward, making him walk toward the throne. As he got closer, Tai-ho could see the figure better. She looked almost human, but not quite. Her skin had a soft blue glow. Her eyes were large and completely black, with no whites at all. Her hair floated around her head like it was underwater, changing colors from silver to purple. "Welcome, Earth specimen," she said. Her voice was deep and musical. "I am Queen Nyara of the Starlight Dominion." Tai-ho stood straight, like he would when meeting important people on Earth. "I am Captain Tai-ho Kim. I am not a specimen. I am a person." The Queen's black eyes studied him. Her head tilted slightly. "Interesting. Most new additions to my collection show fear. I want to return to my mission," Tai-ho said simply. Queen Nyara laughed. It sounded like small bells. "Your mission is now to be part of my collection. I have 7 other humans already, but none from your Korea." Tai-ho felt cold. There were other humans here. "What do you want from us?" "Want? Nothing. You are simply interesting to observe. Your species has primitive technology, but complex emotions and behaviors. It is entertaining." Tai-ho thought of Bori. Was his dog still free somewhere on this ship? He had to be careful not to mention him. "How long will you keep me?" he asked. The Queen waved her long-fingered hand. "Until you die, naturally. We take good care of our specimens. You will be comfortable. And if I refuse to be part of your collection?" Queen Nyara's face didn't change expression, but the lights in the room dimmed slightly. "There is no refusing, Earthman. This is not a request." She leaned forward on her floating throne. "You will be studied first. We will learn your habits, your needs, your behaviors. Then you will join the display chambers with the others." Tai-ho felt anger rising, but he kept his face calm. Getting angry wouldn't help. He needed to think and plan. "Take him to the study chamber," Queen Nyara ordered. "Begin the observation period." As the silver guards guided Tai-ho away, he heard the Queen say, "This one is different. Monitor him closely." Tai-ho walked with his head high. Somewhere on this ship, Bori was free. And as long as that was true, there was hope. For 7 days, Tai-ho lived in the study chamber. It was larger than his first room, with areas for sleeping, eating, and bathing. The walls could change from solid to clear at any time, allowing the aliens to watch him whenever they wanted. Tai-ho kept track of time by counting his meals. He ate the strange but tasty food they provided. He exercised every day, doing push-ups, sit-ups, and running in place. His military training had taught him to keep his body strong, even in captivity. On the 8th day, Queen Nyara visited him again. "You do not cry or beg like the others did," she said. She stood on the other side of the clear wall, watching him as he finished his morning exercises. Tai-ho wiped sweat from his forehead with a small towel. Begging would not change anything. "True." The Queen seemed pleased by his answer. "Tell me about Earth." Tai-ho sat on the edge of his bed. He decided to answer her questions. It might help him learn more about his situation. "What do you want to know?" "Your family units. How do they function?" Tai-ho thought of his parents and his younger sister. "We are born into families. Parents raise their children with love and care. They teach them how to live. Love. The Queen's black eyes blinked slowly. This emotion is important to humans. It is the most important thing to many of us. The Queen made a sound like wind through leaves. Inefficient. We create new members of our species in growth chambers. They are born with all necessary knowledge, but no one to hold them when they are afraid. Tahoe asked. Queen Nyara tilted her head. Fear is a weakness. We remove such emotions through genetic improvement. Tahoe stood up and walked to the wall separating them. In my country, Korea, we have a word, jung. It means a deep connection between people. It gives us strength, not weakness. Interesting theory. The Queen's floating hair changed color, becoming more red than purple. And your loyalty to this, Korea, is it stronger than your wish to live? I do not understand the question. If I told you to speak against your home to earn better treatment, would you? Tahoe looked directly into her black eyes. No. For a moment, the Queen was silent. Then she said, your answers are different from the other humans. They offered to tell me anything, give me anything, if I would just let them go. And did you let them go? Tahoe asked, already knowing the answer. Of course not. The Queen's hair shifted to a cool blue. But you do not even try to bargain. Tahoe thought carefully before speaking. Where I come from, dignity matters. I cannot control what you do to me, but I can control how I face it. The Queen studied him for a long time. Finally, she said, you may have noticed small items missing from your room. Tahoe's heart beat faster. Bori. It had to be his dog taking things. He kept his face calm. I have not noticed. My crew reports strange noises in the ship's maintenance areas, small things taken from food storage. The Queen leaned closer to the clear wall. If there is something you are not telling me. I have been in this room for 7 days. Tahoe said simply, I know nothing of what happens outside it. The Queen's eyes narrowed. Very well. Tomorrow you will be moved to the display chamber with the other humans. Perhaps they will be more cooperative in explaining these events. After she left, Tahoe sat on his bed, hope growing inside him. Bori was alive and moving around the ship. His loyal dog was finding food and staying hidden. That night, as the lights dimmed for sleep time, Tahoe whispered into the darkness. Good boy, Bori. Stay safe. Somewhere in the vast alien ship, he knew his faithful friend was working to find him. While Tahoe faced the alien queen, Bori was learning to survive on the massive ship. The cream-colored Jindo dog moved through the small spaces between walls and under floors where the ship's robots couldn't reach. The neural chip in Bori's brain helped him understand many things. He knew his master was somewhere on this strange place. He could smell Tahoe's scent, but it was mixed with many strange smells that hurt his nose. Bori had a safe spot he had found 3 days after they were captured. It was a small room filled with soft pipes that made warm air. The robots never came here. He had dragged his blanket from Tahoe's ship here, making a nest to sleep in. Every day, Bori explored new parts of the alien ship. He learned which halls had fewer robots. He found where they kept food. The neural chip helped him understand that he needed to stay hidden and find his master. Today, Bori was following a new scent. It smelled like Tahoe, but different. He crawled through a narrow tunnel and came to a large room with clear walls. Inside were people, not Tahoe, but other humans. Bori watched them from its hiding spot. There were 5 humans in the large room. They wore simple white clothes. They looked sad. They didn't look around or do much. They just sat or stood, sometimes talking quietly to each other. Bori knew these were not his people, but they smelled more like home than anything else on this ship. He watched them for a long time before moving on. That same day, in another part of the ship, 2 of the silver robots were reporting to a tall alien with 4 arms. Something is taking food from storage area 5, said the first robot. And tools are missing from repair bay 3, added the second robot. The four-armed alien looked annoyed. How can things be missing? The ship's security system watches everything. There are blind spots in some older sections, said the first robot. And something chewed through a sensor wire yesterday. Chewed. The four-armed alien's eyes widened. Show me. On a screen, the alien looked at the broken wire. The end was clearly cut by teeth, not tools. Could it be one of the specimens from the lower levels? Asked the robot. All specimens are accounted for. The alien tapped on a screen with two of its hands. Except, check if anything came aboard with the new human. The ship scans showed only one life form, replied the robot. Then check again. The alien seemed worried now. Queen Naira will not be pleased if something is loose on her ship. Meanwhile, Bori had found his way to the air ducts above the room where the Queen met with her advisors. He lay flat on his stomach, his brown eyes watching through a small vent as three tall aliens talked with Queen Naira. Bori couldn't understand most of their words, but his special training helped him know this was important. These were the leaders. The one sitting highest, with the floating hair, was the boss. She was the one who had taken his master. Bori watched as they looked at pictures of the ship. They pointed to places where things had been moved or taken. They didn't know it was him. The thought made Bori's tail want to wag, but he kept very still and quiet. When they showed a picture of the broken wire he had chewed through, Bori felt proud. The neural chip in his brain helped him understand that he was causing problems for them. Good. They had taken his master. As the meeting ended, Bori crept back through the air ducts. He needed to find Taiho soon. The aliens were starting to look for him more seriously now. Taiho now lived in the large display room with the other humans. They came from different parts of Earth. A woman from Brazil, a man from Canada, twin brothers from Australia, and an old scientist from Russia. They had all been taken over the past 2 Earth years. The room was more comfortable than his study chamber. It had soft chairs, tables, and even plants that grew without soil. But it was still a cage with clear walls where aliens could watch them anytime. The other humans had given up hope. They barely talked and moved around like ghosts. When Taiho tried to speak with them, they just shook their heads. Don't make plans, warned the Brazilian woman, Lua. The Queen can read minds. That's not true, Taiho said firmly. She's advanced, but not magical. You're new, said one of the Australian twins with a sad smile. You'll learn. But Taiho refused to give up. Each day, he kept his routine of exercise and stayed alert. He watched the guards and learned their schedules. He studied the room for any weakness. On his 3rd day in the display room, Queen Naira came to visit. She dismissed the guards and stood alone before the clear wall. You maintained your physical training, she observed as Taiho completed his exercises. The others stopped after a few weeks. Taiho grabbed a towel to wipe his face. It keeps my mind clear. Your mind interests me, said the Queen. The others broke quickly. But you remain strong. Taiho noticed something different about her today. She seemed less cold, more curious. In my culture, we believe in inner strength, Taiho said. We call it grit. Explain this concept. Taiho sat down on a bench near the wall. It means continuing even when things are difficult, not giving up. The Queen's floating hair turned a soft purple. For what purpose? You cannot escape. Your situation will not change. The purpose is in the trying, Taiho said simply. In keeping who I am. Queen Naira was quiet for a moment. You mentioned a connection between humans. This Zheng, is that what gives you strength? Partly, Taiho nodded. Knowing others care about me, and I care about them. Care. The Queen said the word like it was new to her. We do not have this concept in our language. Just then, the lights in the room flickered and dimmed for a few seconds. When they came back on, Taiho saw something he had never seen before. Uncertainty on the Queen's face. That has been happening throughout the ship, she said, almost to herself. Perhaps your ship needs maintenance, Taiho suggested. The Queen's eyes narrowed. Our systems are perfect. This is something else. For a brief moment, Taeho saw worry cross her face. It made her look almost human. Tell me more about your Earth connections, she said suddenly. You had family. Yes. Parents, a sister. And did you have others you cared for? Not family. Taeho thought of Bori, but he was careful. Yes. Friends. Colleagues. What makes you choose these connections? How do you know who to care for? The question seemed strange coming from such a powerful being. Taeho realized she truly didn't understand. Sometimes you don't choose, he explained. The connection just forms because you share experiences. You learn to trust each other. Trust, repeated the Queen. Another concept we have removed from our society. It creates weakness, opportunity for betrayal. It also creates strength. Taeho countered. When someone stands by you, no matter what. The lights flickered again. This time, Taeho was sure he saw the Queen jump slightly. She was definitely nervous about something. I will return tomorrow, she said abruptly. You will tell me more about these human connections. As she walked away, Taeho smiled to himself. The powerful Queen was troubled by something on her ship, and he was almost certain that something was Bori. Queen Nyara walked alone through the quiet halls of her ship. It was the middle of the sleep cycle, and most of her crew were resting. Only a few guard robots floated silently by the walls. She had ordered them not to follow her. She needed time to think. The human Taeho confused her. His words about connections and trust kept playing in her mind. In all her 300 years, she had never felt what humans called loneliness. Her species had removed such weaknesses long ago. Yet lately, she felt something, an emptiness that had no name in her language. Queen Nyara entered her private garden room. It was filled with plants from 100 different worlds. This was where she came to be alone. No guards, no advisors, no watching eyes. She sat on a bench made of smooth stone and closed her eyes. The strange feelings inside her were getting stronger. Was she becoming ill? Should she report to the medical bay for a mind cleaning? A small sound made her eyes snap open. There, sitting just 10 steps away, was a creature she had never seen before. It had 4 legs, a cream-colored body covered in fur, pointed ears, and alert brown eyes. It sat perfectly still, watching her. Queen Nyara froze. This must be what was causing the problems on her ship. But instead of calling the guards, she found herself simply staring back at the animal. "What are you?" she whispered. The animal tilted its head, as if thinking about her question. Then it stood on all 4 legs and took 1 step toward her. Queen Nyara stayed very still. She had faced dangerous creatures from across the galaxy, but something about this small furry being made her feel strange. Not afraid, but curious. The animal took another step, then another. It moved slowly, carefully, watching her face the whole time. When it was just 2 steps away, it stopped and sat down again. "You're from Earth," Queen Nyara realized. "You came with the human Taeho." At the name Taeho, the animal's ears perked up, and its tail moved from side to side. Slowly, very slowly, Queen Nyara reached out her hand. She had never touched an Earth animal before. Her fingers trembled slightly, something that had never happened in her entire life. The animal looked at her hand. Then, to her complete surprise, it lifted 1 front paw and gently placed it on her palm. A feeling like electric fire raced through Queen Nyara's body. The touch was warm and soft. The animal's eyes seemed to look directly into hers, without fear or hatred. "You're not afraid of me," she whispered in wonder. The animal, Bori, she suddenly remembered from the ship's records of Taeho's mission, made a small sound in his throat. Not threatening, almost friendly. Queen Nyara felt something wet on her face. She touched her cheek with her free hand and found moisture. Tears. Impossible. Her species had not cried in thousands of years. Yet here she was, tears running down her face as this small earth creature kept its paw on her hand, looking at her with what seemed like acceptance. "You should hate me," she said softly. "I took your master. I put him in a cage." Bori removed his paw from her hand. For a moment, Queen Nyara felt a strange sadness at the loss of contact. Then, to her shock, the dog moved closer and placed his head against her knee. The queen sat perfectly still, afraid to move. This creature from another world, who owed her nothing but hatred, was showing her what? Trust, forgiveness. She slowly placed her hand on Bori's soft head. The fur felt amazing under her fingers. As she gently stroked him, a feeling she had never known spread through her chest, warm and painful at the same time. "What is happening to me?" she whispered. For 5 days, Queen Nyara kept a secret for the first time in her life. She told no one about Bori. Each night during the sleep cycle, she would go to her private garden. The dog would be waiting for her. The queen brought food from the ship's kitchen for him. She watched with wonder as Bori ate, his tail wagging happily. She had never seen an animal enjoy food before. "How do you always know when I'm coming?" she asked him on the 3rd night. Bori just looked at her with his intelligent brown eyes. He couldn't answer, but the queen felt like he understood her words. After he ate, Bori would sit beside her on the bench. She would stroke his soft fur, feeling a strange peace she had never known before. "My advisors would think I've gone mad," she told Bori on the 5th night. "In our society, we don't form attachments to other beings. It makes us weak." Bori put his head on her lap and looked up at her. "But I don't feel weak when I'm with you," she whispered. "I feel something new." That night, something different happened. After sitting with her for an hour, Bori stood up and walked to the door. He looked back at her, then at the door again. "You want me to follow you?" Queen Nyara asked. Bori made a small sound in his throat. The queen stood up and followed him. The dog led her through quiet halls, staying in shadows when guard robots passed by. The queen could have ordered the robots away, but something told her to keep Bori a secret a little longer. They went down passages she rarely used, through parts of the ship where only maintenance robots went. Finally, they reached a section near the display rooms. Bori stopped in front of a small air vent near the floor. The queen watched as he pawed at it. The cover was loose, and Bori pushed it open with his nose. He looked at her again, as if asking her to follow, then squeezed through the opening. Queen Nyara hesitated. She was too large for the vent, but Bori's head popped back out, looking at her expectantly. She touched a control panel on the wall. "Security override," she said softly. "Show me the inside of human display room 1. The wall in front of her turned clear. She could see inside the room where Tahoe and the other humans were kept. Most were sleeping, but Tahoe was awake, sitting on the floor near the wall where she stood. As she watched, Bori emerged from a small vent inside the display room. The dog ran silently to Tahoe. The man's face transformed with joy. He wrapped his arms around Bori, burying his face in the dog's fur. His shoulders shook with silent tears. Bori licked his face, tail wagging so hard his whole body moved with it. Queen Nyara watched, unable to look away. The reunion between man and dog showed her something she had never seen before: pure love and joy. There were no words, no logical reason for such emotion. Just two beings happy to be together again. Something broke inside the queen's heart, a wall of ice that had been there since she was created in the growth chambers. A feeling washed over her that had no name in her language. "Loneliness," she whispered, using the human word Tahoe had taught her. For the first time, she understood. The next morning, Queen Nyara called for Tahoe to be brought to her private meeting room. Not the display room, not the throne room where others could watch. She needed to speak with him alone. When Tahoe entered, he stood tall and looked directly at her. He didn't bow or show fear. "Your dog found you," Queen Nyara said. Tahoe's face showed surprise for just a moment, then returned to calm. "Yes. You trained him well." He avoided our sensors for weeks. Even I did not know what was happening on my own ship. Bori is special, Taiho said simply. He was bred and trained for space missions. He's smarter than most dogs. Queen Naira paced the room, her floating hair changing colors rapidly, a sign of strong emotions. He came to me first, before finding you. Did you know that? No, Taiho said, his eyes widening. When? 5 days ago. In my garden room. The Queen stopped pacing. He showed no fear of me. He even touched me. That sounds like Bori, Taiho said with a small smile. He's a good judge of character. I am not a good character. Queen Naira's voice rose. I took you from your home. I keep you in a cage like an animal. I collect beings from across the galaxy for my own entertainment. Taiho didn't argue. He just watched her with steady eyes. The Queen sat down suddenly. Your dog has broken something in me, human. I feel things. Things my species removed from ourselves thousands of years ago. Before Taiho could answer, the door opened. 3 tall aliens entered. They were Queen Naira's top advisors. Your Majesty, said the first advisor, we have detected serious irregularities in your brain patterns. Your emotional centers are showing activity, said the second. This is dangerous. We've prepared the mind-cleaning chamber, said the third. It is for your own safety. Queen Naira stood up. I am fine. Leave us. The advisors exchanged looks. We cannot. Your Majesty, the signs are clear. You've been contaminated by contact with the primitive species. One of them held up a small device that showed a scan of the Queen's brain, with parts lit up in bright colors. See here, the advisor pointed. And here. These are emotion centers. They should be dormant in our species. The ship's computer has flagged you for immediate treatment. Queen Naira's face hardened. I am your queen. You will obey me. In matters of mental contamination, the safety protocols override even your commands, the first advisor said. Please come with us now. Taiho watched this exchange with growing concern. He could see the fear in Queen Naira's eyes, another emotion her species wasn't supposed to have. What is mind cleaning? He asked quietly. The third advisor glanced at him. We will reset Her Majesty's neural patterns to their proper state. All contamination will be removed. You mean her memories, her feelings. Taiho stepped closer to the Queen. Emotions are dangerous, said the advisor. They lead to poor decisions, attachment, weakness. Queen Naira looked at Taiho. They will make me forget Bori, she whispered. They will make me forget everything I've learned. The advisors moved toward their queen. 2 guard robots floated in from the hallway. Suddenly, the lights in the room flickered and went out. In the darkness, something small and fast moved past Taiho's legs. He heard growling, then shouts of surprise. When emergency lights came on a few seconds later, Bori stood in front of Queen Naira, his teeth bared at the advisors. The guard robots were on the floor, their systems disabled. How did that creature get in here? Demanded the first advisor, backing away from Bori's growls. Queen Naira placed her hand on Bori's head. The dog stopped growling but stayed alert. The cleaning will not happen, she said firmly, and I have made a decision. She looked at Taiho. I'm sending you home, both of you. Alarms blared throughout the massive ship. Red lights flashed in every hallway. The Queen's decision to free Taiho had triggered a security protocol. Her advisors had declared her unfit to rule and were trying to take control. We must hurry, Queen Naira said as she led Taiho and Bori through hidden passages. My ship will find your vessel. It's still in the storage bay. Bori ran ahead of them, sniffing the air and checking each turn. The neural chip in his brain helped him understand they were escaping. What about the other humans? Taiho asked. I sent orders to release them too, the Queen said, whether my crew obeys or not. She didn't finish her sentence. Already she could feel her authority slipping away. They reached a small door. Queen Naira pressed her hand to a panel, and it slid open. Inside was Taiho's small spacecraft, looking tiny in the huge alien hangar. "It's been repaired and improved," she said. "It will get you home safely." Just then, 6 guard robots appeared at the far end of the hangar. They moved quickly toward the group. "Get in." Queen Naira pushed Taiho toward his ship. "I'll hold them off." But Taiho grabbed her arm. "Come with us." The Queen stared at him in shock. "What?" "Come with us to Earth," Taiho said again. "There's nothing for you here now." Bori barked as if agreeing, his tail wagging as he looked at the Queen. Queen Naira hesitated. Leave her empire. Go to a primitive planet. It was unthinkable. And yet, the guard robots were getting closer. They would take her for mind cleaning. She would forget everything. The feeling of Bori's fur under her fingers, the way Taiho looked at her not with fear but with understanding. "Yes," she whispered, surprising herself. "Yes, I will come." The 3 of them ran to the ship. Taiho quickly started the engines while Queen Naira sealed the door behind them. Bori jumped into his special space seat, already knowing what to do. The ship lifted off just as more robots poured into the hangar. Energy beams hit the ship's hull, but the shields held. "My improvements," Queen Naira said with a small smile. Taiho guided the ship toward the hangar doors. "They're not opening," he shouted. Queen Naira placed her hand on a new control panel she had added to his ship. "Emergency override," she said. The massive doors began to slide open. "Not fast enough," Taiho said, his hands tight on the controls. "We'll make it," Queen Naira said firmly. "Just don't stop." The ship accelerated toward the slowly opening doors. It was going to be very close. Bori whined softly from his seat. "Trust me," the Queen said to both of them. The ship barely fit through the gap, scraping its sides as it burst free into open space. Behind them, the crystal alien ship grew smaller as they raced away. "Setting course for Earth," Taiho said, his voice calm despite everything. For 3 weeks, they traveled through space. At first, Queen Naira was quiet, often staring at the stars. But slowly, she began to talk more, to ask questions about Earth and Taiho's life there. One day, they passed a small moon with an atmosphere. Taiho decided to land for supplies and to stretch their legs. As they stepped out of the ship, dark clouds opened up above them. Rain poured down, heavy and warm. Queen Naira froze as water hit her face. "What is this?" she asked in wonder. "Rain," Taiho explained. "Water falling from clouds." Bori ran into the downpour, jumping and playing in the puddles forming on the rocky ground. His joy was so pure that Queen Naira laughed. A real laugh, not the cold sound she used to make. She stepped away from the shelter of the ship and lifted her face to the sky. The rain washed over her, plastering her normally floating hair to her head and shoulders. For the first time in her life, she felt truly alive. "This," she said softly, "this is worth giving up an empire for." Taiho smiled as he watched her spin in the rain, with Bori dancing circles around her feet. She was no longer the cold alien queen. She was becoming something new, something more human. They were going home, all 3 of them.